Hello, beautiful human, and welcome back to Idea Sex, where we attempt to make some sense of the human experience through the intercourse of ideas. And we'll get there. But today, I need to get something off my chesticles first. I was in the grocery store, minding my own business, as you do, as you should. And I'm in gym clothes because I don't really own anything else. And this man in his 60s-ish, I don't know what it is with me in that demographic. I am like a supercharged baby boomer magnet. But he approaches me, and presumably because I'm in tight clothing, he looks me up and down and he says, "God bless." And I was like, "Excuse me?" Like, thinking I had misheard him or his tone, but no, it was definitely lecherous because then he did it again. He was like, "God bless you." And I was like, did I sneeze?
And his name is John C.
Not the nicest way to shut someone down, but I didn't think about it. I just said it, and then I heard myself say it, and I was like, that was not nice. But it was kind of clever. But also, like, what does it mean? Like, why do we say God bless you when someone sneezes? It was like saying that as a comeback made me reframe the words "God bless you" in an entirely new light. They were aliens. So I'm over here spiraling like, what does it mean? And this man is trying to communicate something to me. I don't know what it is because I'm completely lost in thought. And finally like, okay, boomer, I'm sorry, this is very important. I need to go research. He had no idea what I was talking about, of course. Went back to my lair and I rabbit holed, as you do, as I do, as you should when you're curious. There were a lot of explanations as to why we say "bless you" when someone sneezes, but the one that stuck with me was that people used to believe we were expelling demons from our body. Which, if that's the case, why don't we say that? Like, "Demons be gone! Away with you, foul devil!" On second thought, that's kind of weird. Just scratch that and we'll stick with "bless you." And I was like, how would a demon even get inside of you? Did people just believe they hung out in you until you sneezed? Like you're some corner liquor store, and that's where evil goes when it wants a good time. Like, I don't understand. Should I be concerned? And so, of course, the rabbit hole continues to spiral down into the world of possession. And actually, the liquor store analogy isn't that inaccurate. Although I don't know who just hangs out in a store. I don't really drink or know things. I'm like the opposite of Tyrion Lannister.
That's what I do. I drink and I know things.
That's what I do. I stay hydrated and I don't know shit. It's like 2-day-old coffee. I'm not drinking that shit. Less like a liquor store, from what I could tell, and more like a leaky bucket. You're trying to fill yourself up with the light of God, but at the same time, you're a sinful, fallible little human, and as a result, you're like popping holes, and the more holes you have, the easier it is for demons to sink their little demony claws into you.
I have exorcised the demons.
When I look at any sort of religious or spiritual concept, I tend to look at it on a metaphorical level, and so I was like, demons exist in every culture. What do they symbolize? And two things came to mind. One was mental illness, which there are some theories that the possessions we read about in the Bible, for instance, are actually cases of epilepsy or schizophrenia, and we will come back to that idea of mental illness. The other thing was Carl Jung's shadow. And Carl Jung is the founder of analytical psychology. He was actually a student of Freud, who we talked about in the last video a little bit on sex transmutation, which don't watch that. The demons will have a very easy time getting in. Don't recommend it. 11 out of 10 don't recommend. Carl Jung was probably best known for his work with archetypes, and the shadow archetype is basically a metaphor for the dark side of our psyche, the animalistic, chaotic parts. You mean the fun part? These are the things that we repress in ourselves. They are the negative qualities. The 7 deadly sins could be examples. If we wanted to take it back to the biblical stuff, aggression and sexuality are common examples. Childhood wounds, basically anything that makes us feel so deeply flawed that we are unlovable or unworthy. And So these are the dark buried things. These are the things that are made unconscious by our brain. It tries to protect us by blocking these things out and sort of relegating them to the shadow realm.
You shall not pass!
But repression never works. Doesn't matter if we're talking about sex energy in that last video or these metaphorical demons. When we repress, we still express, typically in worse ways. And so with the shadow, symptoms of repressing the shadow can be social anxiety, neuroticism, limiting beliefs, arrogance. The way I said that sounded so arrogant. Arrogance. Deviant sexual behavior, which Hitler is an interesting study in that. We're not going to get into that today, or ever. You know what? It's gross. Forget I said anything. Addiction is also a self-destructive behavior. And so in addition to these behaviors, we also have coping mechanisms. So things like social personas, or he calls them social masks, rationalization, and my favorite, shadow projection, which just sounds like a speck in a rogue's skill tree, or like that thing they do in I think it's Naruto, when he makes multiple of him and they're like shadows. Yeah, he's like projecting shadows. No, I don't watch anime actually. Kind of nerd do you take me for? An oft-cited example of projection is the homophobe who is homophobic because he's gay. It's this idea that what we deny in ourselves, we hate in another, and that maybe the reason we all get mad at people who drive like assholes is because sometimes we drive like assholes. And so there's actually a solid tactic for identifying the shadow. And I think tactics are important because, let me tell you, when I was first learning about this stuff, I was like, this doesn't apply to me. I'm like a puppy that shits sparkles. Like, there's nothing malevolent in me. To which one might respond, didn't this video start with you verbally smacking down an old man at a store because he thought you were pretty? And to that I would say touche. That's why it's called your shadow, man. It's slippery and elusive, and that it's hard to catch. And so sometimes we have to get tricky with ourselves, outsmart ourselves, and you can do this through reflection, but it's difficult because shadow work, this process of making our darkness conscious, of making our unconscious conscious, is really all about seeking that which does not want to be found. And so sitting down and just thinking about like your hidden parts of your psyche may be completely futile.
Not listening. Not listening.
So one thing we can do instead is look for emotional cues, especially number one cue being judgment. And so the tactic is this: whenever we feel ourselves wanting to judge someone rather than judging them, we ask ourselves, one, maybe why they're doing what they're doing, but two, we get curious about why something bothers us. And a lot of the time, we'll find that the reason something bothers us is because it reminds us of something we don't like in ourselves. But Jung pointed out that we need these repressed qualities, these negative qualities. He believed that in integrating our shadow, by making the unconscious conscious, we would experience a psychological rebirth. And so it's kind of ironic, this idea that we embrace our inner darkness in order to arrive at a better, higher version of ourselves. But that's in part because when we acknowledge that these things exist in us, we can make them serve us. So rather than them owning us and us not even realizing it, we can own them and channel them. And aggression, I think, is a great example of this. So personally, I think it's good to be the kind of person who can stand up for themselves and the people around them. But in order to be that person, you have to recognize your capacity for violence, for confrontation. Now, that doesn't mean we, act out on that aggression and go around punching people in the face when we don't get our way. It's just the idea that by acknowledging that it exists within us, we can harness it. And that gives us the backbone to be assertive. So in other words, we just gotta own what we are and work it. Okay, so what is the connection with demons? Comparative mythologist Joseph Campbell from episode 1. It always goes back to Joseph Campbell, by the way. That's why we started with the hero's journey, is because in my head, everything goes back to Campbell. But he has a quote that I think pulls this together really nicely. So he says, "My definition of a devil is a god who has not been recognized. That is to say, it is a power within you to which you have not given expression, and you push it back. And then, like all repressed energy, it builds up and becomes completely dangerous to the position you're trying to hold." So what I'm picking up is that demons are the undealt with parts of ourselves, the parts that we have to consciously shine a light on in order to arrive at a better, higher version of ourselves. And this brings me back to the point about mental illness. So did you know that in some flavors of shamanism, mental illness is considered the birth of a healer? It's a spiritual crisis. And that sounds a little crazy, but it makes so much sense to me when I think about it in terms of the people that I know who have struggled with things like anxiety and depression. They often become healers of some kind. And I think and not necessarily literally, but caretakers, nurturers, teachers, empaths. And I think empathy is at the heart of it. I think that when we go to a dark place and we struggle there, but we manage to come back, I think people have a massive capacity for empathy. It's returning with the elixir, as Campbell would have said in that first episode. Just going to keep plugging my own shit, apparently. As usual, science is the last one to the party. I love you, science, but you are always late. It is amazing to me the things that that religion and mysticism have been trying to tell us for millennia, that science is only now just coming around to. Granted, science is kind of a new thing. And the important thing is he's here and he has a couple of things to share. So in recent years, we've started to prove that the human body physically holds on to trauma. And the book that put this on the map is The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. By Bessel. I'll put the link in the description. I don't know how to say his name. But he is a luminary in the field of trauma therapy, and he defines trauma as an event that is too stressful or too painful to comprehend. His literal words are, "We can't integrate it, so it keeps coming up," which sounds an awful lot like Jung's shadow. Not only do we hold on to trauma literally, physically, but we're starting to prove that we can inherit trauma epigenetically. That means whatever demons your parents and their parents didn't work through, you get to deal with now. But how's that for original sin? Thanks, Nana. There's another book called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wallen. Don't know how to say his name either, but he shows us how trauma is inherited and perpetuated through gene expression. So what he terms emotional inheritance, what we get from our ancestors, we will continue to pass down until we heal and break the cycle. So no pressure, it's just all on our shoulders now. As our understanding of the human genome improves, we're finding that a lot of our DNA is actually susceptible to trauma. So we used to think that only 2% of our DNA was really useful, right? The chromosomal DNA. And now people used to believe that the other 98%, the non-coding DNA, was just junk. But now we're realizing that a lot of that DNA is triggered, is the genes are turned on or off based on environmental and emotional stressors. And so there have been transgenerational trauma studies. So if you look at the aftermath of genocide, we often find that children express the same PTS symptoms as their parents. They may have violent visions, even though they weren't the ones in the war zone. And there have been studies carried out on animals as well, like it or not. And so in studies where baby mice were deprived of maternal care for a certain period of time every day, they later in life would experience symptoms of anxiety and depression, but it didn't stop there. When they were adults and had their own babies, those babies, even if they weren't deprived of maternal care, would also express those same patterns. And this could continue for generations. All goes to show that trauma, demons, those shadows, are inheritable. So the idea I'm playing with is a really simple definition of demons. They are the things inside of us that scare us, that we either want to hide or hide from. And in confronting them, we can actually arrive at a better, higher version of ourselves. Jung has a great quote to wrap this up. He actually has a lot of great quotes. He wrote books on this. There's a lot of material, but I had to pick one. And so I picked one that kind of rings Campbellian, of course. Okay, he says, In myths, the hero is the one who conquers the dragon, not the one who is devoured by it, and yet both have to deal with the same dragon. The one who has risked the fight with the dragon and is not overcome by it wins the hoard, the treasure hard to attain. He alone has a genuine claim to self-confidence, for he has faced the dark ground of his self and thereby has gained himself. Everything that menaced him from inside he has made his own. He has acquired the right to believe that he will be able to overcome all future threats by the same means. Again, sounds very Campbellian to me, and I love that Jung refers to this like golden treasure that's hard to attain, because he had another theory of our golden shadow, and the golden shadow are the beautiful things that we repress in ourselves that we later have to reclaim in life, and that is going to be the subject for the next video. That is it for this week. I hope you enjoyed. If the golden shadow interests you, or if anything related to unlocking the human potential interests you, do subscribe. Throw me one of these for the algorithm, and as always, I would love to have some idea sex with you in the comments. Until next time, stay bright, stay tuned, and stay blessed.